Oh my goodness gracious. Welcome. 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 It's another one. We're here again. Yes, we're here again. Welcome to Z Podcast. My name is Sakai. And we do very interesting things here in a very improvisational way. We are going to be talking about Adam Neely and a great video. He has just released one of the most important critiques in AI, and specifically in music, that I've basically ever seen. 90 minutes. All right, 90 minutes. My man made 90 minutes of rigorous argumentation. And I agree with this. 90% of this I agree with. And one of the great things about this video is that he highlights a solution and a specific problem that isn't fully detailed in his video, because that's not the main point of his video. But I want to highlight a connection between improvisation and his video, and how we have something as a society, we have something as humanity that AI does not have. And there is a beauty in understanding this framework beyond just simple art and generation and etc. I've been struggling with really understanding why AI in art is bad. I knew deep down, common sense, that AI in art is generally bad, but I couldn't specifically articulate. And Adam Neely greatly creates this wonderful argument against AI music in general. And I spent hundreds of hours writing, doing cross-analysis, and proving why this framework works universally throughout our whole entire species. Jazz, Arabic, maqām, Javanese, Gamelan, all of these different cultures practice improvisation, and there is a structure underneath it all that works exactly the same. I studied practitioners talking about improvisation and found that there is something identical, and that structure is what AI cannot steal, because it's something human. It's something within. So let's dive deep, as we always do at Z Podcast, dive deep into Adam Neely's video and create some commentary, and also show that beautiful connection between this anti-AI video and improvisation. So we're going to start with the idea of descaling, impatience. When we talk about the world of AI music, there are 4 arguments out of the 7 arguments that I think are incredibly important that Adam talks about. One of which is the idea of impatience. We are going to share the screen. Yes, we are. Amazing.
On Suno's website, alongside music, fun, and aesthetics, they list impatience as a core virtue, which I gotta say doesn't really strike me as a virtue.
First of all, it's not a virtue. Impatience is not a virtue. It actually goes against all of the virtues.
That's virtue ethicist and Platonic scholar Dr. Mariana of the University of Arizona, who I talked to at great length about the deeper philosophical implications of the widespread adoption of generative AI.
So this is a very important point to start us off. $2+ billion company lists as one of its core values impatience. And this is a very interesting mindset, a very interesting point. First of all, as Dr. Noé highlights, this is not a virtue and goes against virtues that are commonly known among society and proposed by Plato. Impatience contradicts the courage, moderation, and wisdom virtues. But my interpretation of this is that experience is being usurped by convenience. The world that we live in is very convenience driven because of capitalism and other economic mechanisms. That is highly valued. Our life has a very huge element of convenience, and there's nothing wrong with that inherently. But appreciation, art, consumption that is meaningful often needs to value experience over convenience. And building an improvisational capacity, building around my framework in a way that is true to yourself within whatever medium that might be, art, sports, music, wherever that might be, is really important to allow yourself to grasp experiences. The whole critical idea of the framework talks about time and experience as the utmost important. To become a good improviser, and the architecture that I highlighted, one thing that we talk about is that to get good at these unpredictable creative things is that it takes years and years of time, hours and hours and hours of practice, and reflection. Reflection is incredibly important. And when you have a prompt that allows you to skip all 3 stages, doesn't even allow you to reflect, that's not efficiency. That is, for lack of better words, an emptiness, a drought, a hollowness within that experience. It's very much convenience. The second argument that I want to highlight is de-skilling. Finally getting there. Yeah? De-skilling is talking about a very interesting study that was done on AI. And this is somewhat more known now as the news has continuously covered it over the past, I would say, few months. So let's hear more about de-skilling in Adam's arguments.
Able to do just fine. This has led to a frightening process in the workplace called de-skilling. When decisions are offloaded to generative AI, skilled labor turns into unskilled labor. The people who have specialized training are cognitively stripped of that training. And we're starting to see this in the medical field. A recent study found that after only 3 months of using an AI tool designed to help spot precancerous growths during colonoscopies, doctors were significantly worse at finding the growths on their own. They were, in fact, de-skilled. We're probably going to start seeing a similar thing happening in music in the next couple of years, given the ubiquity of generative AI in the field.
I have not been in a session in the last 12 months that AI was not used.
So this is, we learn, Harvey Manson Jr., who is the CEO of the Grammys, basically saying that AI is everywhere. Crazy. It's not future speculation. This isn't something that's just conjecture. This is clear that AI is becoming used by a lot of people in all levels of the music scene. And when we find that there is a loss of cognitive muscles, that they get atrophied over time, I mean, it makes perfect sense, but that is a scary thing. In order for us to experience the world, we have to have a mind for it. We have to understand what experience is. And to take the full advantage of that, we have to be proactive in the way that we understand the world. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into this de-skilling aspect, but I think that it's really important to, when we go to the framework and the research that was done, to see how allowing your improvisational skills and your creative skills to reach unprecedented heights will be the way that you escape from, or a method that you can use to escape from AI. So I want to highlight clear evidence of the bad things that are going on with AI and Suno. So Adam Neely created a survey specifically finding 3 sets of answers from 3 questions to proctor Suno users and their opinions and perspective on AI music.
So on social media, I asked 3 questions of people who used Suno. This was not a particularly scientific survey, but I did get a couple hundred people responding, and I thought the responses were very interesting. The first question was, what have generative AI tools like Suno empowered you to do that you cannot do with digital audio workstations or traditional musical instruments? The second question was, do you feel like you have a unique voice with your music when you create songs with Suno? And the third question was, who are some of your favorite AI musicians who have influenced you? What about them inspires you?
So I found these 3 questions very particular and interesting. And when I did my analysis on practitioner interviews and things of that nature, one question that would come up often was inspiration. And this was a very important part to allow support for the first stage of my framework, which talks a lot about the accumulation of memory. And when you have someone that inspires you, you listen to them over and over and you hear what they do and you reflect on their different skills and things. And over time, as you learn the gamut of their genre, of their field, you get more keen on the different uniquenesses and idiosyncrasies of their performance, art, whatever it might be. So what is the answer to this third question? Because I think it's one of the more important revelations that Adam highlights.
Because it's so heavily weighted to the status quo. Now, the third question I asked was, who are some of your favorite AI musicians who have influenced you? What about them inspired?
Also, like, something that I really find incredible about Adam's video is that there's little motifs, as you hear, throughout the video. And he also has a live interlude section, and it's just incredible. Like, I love the musicality that's thrown throughout that kind of keeps things moving forward, keeps our attention, as well as adds like a layer of irony and comedy to it. It's very interesting.
Okay, so even though I kind of knew what the answers to this question would be, it still was really bleak reading them, because the vast majority of people, as it turns out, do not have influences. I don't have any AI influences. I'm afraid I don't have any. At the moment, nothing. I don't listen to anybody else. I don't know any. I do not listen to AI slop. No influence. I don't know of any. Haven't heard any. No one. I don't know any AI relevant artist. Not applicable. I have no idea, to be honest. At the moment, nothing. I don't have an AI music influence. None. I do not religiously follow anyone. I don't have any AI music influences. Why can't people who use Suno cite their influences?
Very interesting. Because role models require demonstrable skill. You admire people who have abilities, mastery, etc. That's what Adam highlights. You look up to people who are doing something that you can't do. That's what Adam talks about. That's what Adam says. And this idea is the smoking gun. And it's not because technology is new, because Adam highlights people who have used AI for years, but no one cites them. Because what makes someone worth admiring isn't any specific line of people that they come from or culture that they might come from. It's simply the engagement to, I believe, it's this engagement to this architecture that I'm talking about. When craft becomes irrelevant, and we're going to talk about that as well, roles disappear, there is no magic that you can feel because you can prompt just like anyone else. That's what Adam talks about throughout his video. But I want to highlight the final bit of argument that I think is really interesting, which is the splitting, the bifurcation of music, live music versus recorded music. And I think that this is really important to give us a solution that I want to add on with my framework. So let's listen to what he has to say.
Together, and it just didn't even come close. It turns out that people actually really love the real world when there is music and art in it. People really love having the real world around them if it can be filled with the joy of music and community. This is the hopium for this video, guys. You experienced it along with me. We were locked indoors and we hated it. And the second that we were able to go outdoors and experience live music safely, by the way, we took that opportunity and ran with it, because the real world is a beautiful space when there is room for music and the arts.
Again, I think that this is incredibly well constructed. There's another section that I want to highlight of the same.
As an art form, I'm becoming more and more, quite frankly, doomer about. Because even if you don't use generative AI in your music, the art form itself is starting to become quite suspect. I have stopped believing what I see on social media. There's been such a fundamental breakdown in trust of recorded media in general. I predict there's going to be more and more a breakdown of trust.
And I think that this breakdown of trust, and that's what Adam also believes, this breakdown of trust, the commodification of certain fields in music are going to create the splitting. And he highlights the cinema and theater split, where cameras changed what it meant to do that specific type of art. And Neely predicts this for music, and I'm going to show you something that's kind of proves why it's structurally inevitable. And what is the split going to be musically, in my opinion? When we talk about improvisation, when we talk about art creation, when we talk about doing anything unpredictable, there's a very interesting architecture that arises. And I'm going to talk about the different levels within the overall main architecture and then the results of that architecture through society. Improvisation is a very, very interesting thing, I must admit. It's like probably I would say one of the most important parts of people's lives. And it impacts a lot of our lives because we do a lot of things in a way that is kind of seeking the unknown, if that makes sense. We are in a place that we know, but we're doing things that just come to us. We're reacting to things. We're developing things. And all of this is part of, in my opinion, specifically music, a 3-level hierarchy. The first level and the most important level is the architecture that underlies it. This is temporal consciousness that all people have. It's this idea of prefiguration, configuration, reconfiguration, multi-directional awareness, and real-time synthesis. So let's talk about what the hell that actually means. The first stage is also known as memory. What is memory? Memory is this idea of accumulated knowledge, an accumulated past. Every pattern that you've learned, chord, scale, song, experience of live performance that you've witnessed, every time that you've sat down at the piano, every time that you've sat down on your instrument, every time that you sang, every time that you read a book about music, every time that you experience a world that is musical, it all gets accumulated into your mind. And then this is going into the second stage. Those memories and things create a configuration ability, the ability to vary, change, develop, and create music on the fly. This can be from a non-improvisatory standpoint, which is like a classical musician recalling a song. For instance, if you play, I don't know, something from Beethoven, something from Bach, and you simply play it as it is written, even that has this idea within it. You are taking memory, which is not just the score, but also all the things that you've learned, the interpretation that you want to put in, the phrasing that you want to put in, the way that you want to play, all goes into, in the live moment, decision making. And beyond that, I called it synthesizing of a variety of different parameters at once. The rubato, the specific articulation, the highlights of certain lines. Those things are beyond the score, but because you've accumulated a lot of knowledge over time, you're able to use it. Improvisation takes agency, the ability to go off the paper, the ability to create things and musical moments and elements that are not written, that are not archived. And this idea of improvisation also uses those kind of different constraints, right? You're integrating rhythm, harmony, structure, partners, physical execution, aesthetic goals, all simultaneously, and it's attentive and it's synthesized all at once so that you can create something. And finally, the third stage is how the performance transforms you. How what you created transforms you. In improvisation, if you make a mistake or if you just are improvising, varying, and you find something beautiful, that transforms what you know. What you play today changes what you'll do tomorrow. And this idea of the past, present, and future all coalesce into a cyclical architecture because the transformation, as I said, goes back to the memory. It's a cycle. This refiguration aspect goes back into prefiguration and it creates a loop. And this is something that AI simply does not have, and it does not do. AI does not accumulate knowledge. It retrieves certain training data. AI does not synthesize between constraints. It is generating from specific prompts, and those prompts are not to the same degree and do not utilize the same kind of information that if you were to create does. And AI transforms through performance. Sorry, AI doesn't transform to performance. Funny enough, when we listen to AI music, it can transform what we think about music in general. It can transform how we play music in general. And that in itself is something that AI can't do. And that's why it's so structureless and hollow. It's pattern matching these specific implementations and cultural norms without engaging the actual temporal consciousness that led up to it. This synthesization is the idea of taking memory, expectation, past, and future, and combining it into the present moment. AI doesn't do any of this. When you are improvising, you have a goal in mind. You are referencing past structural, chord, harmonic, whatevers, and you are playing it within certain constraints, whether that be as basic as 4/4 or in a environment of many people and interacting with them, or you only have 2 octaves on your piano. There is so many different kinds of constraints that you can do. And this idea, again, is not just a decision making, which is something that my research highlighted. It's not simply real-time decisions at certain decision points, but it's a synthesizing all at once because there's so many different things that a musician has to juggle. And this idea of the creative process in music applies to art, applies to sports, applies to anything that you're doing that is unpredictable but within certain confines. And if we get really strong at this is something that will define us and something that we can all activate and see within others. That is what I believe is attractive and truly what distinguishes live music from recorded ones. Just to highlight, there are 4 types of different constraints. The physical actions that you do, the structural things that you reference, the interactive partners, whether that be people or the audience, musicians or the audience, and the aesthetic goal, certain purpose that you have. Now, let's talk about the other levels of the 3 of the 3-level hierarchy that I talk about. The second level is the shared traditions that aren't universal. Things like 12 equal temperament, or the certain types of rhythms that are allowed or disallowed or common or not common. The harmonic series, the acoustic principles of the world. Jazz and classical music share this, 12 equal temperament. But Arabic, maqām, and Gamelan don't have those kinds of specific equal temperament systems or tuning systems in general. Arabic, maqām, and jazz share similar metric rhythms, but they don't have any similar interval systems. They have microtones and things of that nature. But these kind of similar communications allow musicians to understand each other. When a jazz musician and a classical musician plays, they can maybe get some bits and pieces of each other's playing. Same thing in Arabic music, same thing in any other type of music. There is similarities between the different cultures. Now, AI can operate in some senses of this, but not fully. We'll get to that in a moment, but nonetheless, AI truly understands is the implementation parameters, which is just the idea of how you apply certain dimensions that I found are very common within cultures, within improvisation. And these parameters allow you to then generate constraints. So inherited traditions are like, cultural, jazz, maqām, gamelan, classical, different genres. There are different traditions that have been refined over decades, if not centuries. And this is what I believe most people think improvisation is. It's learning through a culture, learning a tradition. Now, I also believe that there are people that go outside of that. Hybrid practitioners, people who combine cultures together, which AI can do some of, but also people who just go on their own way. And I believe that people such as Jacob Collier, Sade, who are incredibly unique in their specific sound that are just beyond jazz, beyond classical, beyond the simple pop music that you might hear. There's something so idiosyncratic and unique about them that distinguishes them. And I believe that it's the constraint systems that they use, these implementation parameters that they use that are against any culture, that are specific. And that's what AI can't touch. It can remix the cultural aspects. It might be able to blend jazz and hip hop, but it can't generate new systems. And that's an argument that Adam Neely talks about. And again, I find this incredibly fascinating. He talks about how could AI have invented jazz? if it was only trained on things before jazz, or if it was trained on a specific set of genres. Because jazz challenged the status quo, and AI is all about the status quo. And it introduces elements that you didn't know that you wanted, as Adam says. This is an incredible point. Incredible point. So, a synthesist, right? A person who generates novel constraints that are operating within novel parameters. And it's distinct from someone who is a hybrid practitioner, but still, I believe that those two types of people, those two types of musicians, are incredibly important in the anti-AI and pushing against AI. So when a person practices this kind of idea, I believe that a great example of this, as I highlighted before, is Jacob Collier. I believe that Jacob Collier highlights specific constraints that he uses that are incredibly unique to him. There are some intervolic constraints. Jacob Collier uses these very closed voicings that kind of go against traditional voice leading, but he still makes it work with voice leading. But nonetheless, there is an idea of requiring precise control over these very closed voicings. And then another thing that he does is something that feels much more broader, which is the tuning systems. He uses microtones all the time, precise quarter note to quarter tone control that's not inherited within any specific cultural tradition or something. And even if it is, he's created a whole new genre. Because when Adam created the argument around could AI create jazz, yes, you could combine two cultures, but there's something even further that I believe that temporal consciousness answers and creates that nothing can touch that jazz has. This like cyclical process over time, memory accumulation, real-time practice, and then reflection creates over time uniqueness that is not found within any other culture. And that's how these beautiful genres distinct themselves. And that's how I think people can distinct themselves, as I'm highlighting. There's also a temporal aspect of that there is polymeters, polymetric layering. There is a awareness that he has of time that Jacob Collier can use that is just beautiful, from 5/4 to 7/8, giving us an 18/16. Have you seen the hand thing that he does, where he does the different 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like polymeter system, like crazy stuff? But that's very unique to him. Regardless of skill, that's very unique to who he is. And I believe that that is showing him a accumulation of knowledge over time, a mastery of those intervals, of those chords, the textural, the intervalic, the temporal, and what they do emotionally and structurally for you, the aesthetic, the structural constraints, the internal controls. And then it's used in a real-time manner, whether it be in recorded or composed works, whether it be in his live performances, especially his live performances. And he shows the mastery of those different constraints that he improvises within. And then we can see him transform. I mean, his albums show a huge transformation from his first album, I believe it was called In My Room, and then further into Jesse Volume 4, we see a huge evolution of these same kind of core ideas and constraints being used in live recordings, or just in live music, or in recordings just in general, production. AI cannot generate this. I'm telling you, AI cannot generate this, because this kind of action over time of variation, AI does not understand the functionality of specific things, let alone the functionality of chord clusters that Jacob Collier uses all the time. It's just pattern matching. AI cannot live music its way through this. It's prompting. It has no constraints. Jacob Collier is just one of many people that it can try and emulate, but Jacob Collier designs the constraints and governs what's admissible, and AI music cannot touch that kind of governance. It operates within existing rules, not new ones. And the reflection aspect, we can see Collier's transformation over time, even from day to day. And AI cannot do that. And that's why I believe hybrid practitioners, people who understand temporal consciousness very strongly, and people who are synthesists, people who do novel constraint systems, will resist commodification, will benefit each other for AI performance. And it's, incredibly important that this skill lasts on and will divide the music scene. And it's something that will never be able to be compressed into prompts. So let's talk about the final few points of this beautiful, wonderful podcast. Yes. The answer to the splitting that Adam Neely talks about is structurally inevitable. We've covered this. And I believe that live performance requires this architecture. And this is why live performance is going to create prestige, is going to create the engagement of temporal consciousness between people, because that's going to be all that we have left within art. We feel it operating when it's live performing because, as Adam Neely highlighted, that's why COVID virtual concerts felt different. Because the music was technically there, perhaps even live performance, but playback eliminates this live real-time synthesis with the audience, with the interactive partners. There's no architectural engagement. That 3-stage system, there's no engagement with that from the musician and the people. And sure, recording music can have that architectural engagement, and I believe that that does better to engage that temporal consciousness than recorded production does. But the commodification challenges this idea and will soon be overrun by AI slop. And I wouldn't say that, live is good, recorded is bad, but architectural engagement is going to be valuable, and pattern matching and this mathematical hula is going to not be valued, basically be worthless. So what does this designing constraints actually mean and look like? If you want to design your own way of creating these implementation parameters and yada yada, there is an idea of structural coherence. You have to be able to create the sufficiency to enable pattern accumulation, to enable real-time synthesizing, to enable reflection. If it's too loose, it becomes incoherent. If it's too rigid, it becomes too tight and almost becomes anti-improvisation. What that might mean is the lack of agency, as I talked about in improvisation in jazz versus classical music. And then navigatability. Can these constraints allow you to improvise, or are you going to violate? If you are going to violate those constraints, then maybe you need to change them. Work within your means. Kind of an entrepreneurial thing to do. Work within what you have. Communicatability. Do listeners of unfamiliar concepts, listeners who don't understand your constraints, such as listening to Jacob Collier for the first time, or any specific unique musician of their time, do you still perceive the beginnings, the developments, the cyclical nature, perhaps the resolutions, the tensions and release that Jacob Collier highlights, the overall specific but intangible abstract concepts that are being constantly used within the music? Do listeners hear that? Do I hear that? And this tests whether or not you're engaging with that architecture, and people are engaging with that architecture, because it should be universally felt. When I listened to Arabic maqām for the first time, the tarab, I didn't understand really what was going on theoretically, but I could feel that something was being engaged. I could feel the idea that this was not just something spontaneous, but something deeper must be going on. And I could hear the cyclical nature of the structure of the music. I could hear the microtones. I couldn't fully understand them, but I knew them. So if a student designs certain intervalic ideas, certain textural ideas, certain structural ideas, like if you were to play only cluster chords, but your left hand would only play, let's say, octaves in that sense, and this is maybe a little bit of a tighter constraint type of idea, and the phrases that you play must follow certain patterns, like let's say Fibonacci sequence of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just this idea of this, maybe the beats are in those kind of manners. I don't know. But creating those kinds of things is untouchable from AI, and varying over time is untouchable with AI. And as you practice and reflect, maybe you can't do the Fibonacci pattern, but you want to do a different type of one. And this is all something that AI doesn't do. It does not test. It does not see its capacity. It does not design and revise systems or reflect in a way that's aware of what kills and what lives, right? We're going to get to something that Adam talks about relating to that. The synthesis path is an act of refusal, refusing to believe that cultural lineage is the only way to authenticity, that hybrid practitioners and people who design their own constraints are also as good of an improviser as someone who has spent 20 years within jazz. If you spend 20 years with yourself and this temporal consciousness idea and just accumulating knowledge over time, that can be enough. And this is also a refusal of letting AI control what music creation means, refusing to just simply dive ourselves into words. We need to build architectural capacity, this idea of temporal consciousness. Again, it spans all through not only music, but art and anything unpredictable. So what's the connection back to his video? The connection back to his video is the idea that the world that we live in, craft and improvisation combine. So Dr. Noé talks about this in what craft means and understanding outcomes.
Even is.
I'm thinking about the notion of craft that we talked a little bit about it. But craft means, for Plato and for Aristotle, knowing what the outcome of your work, your production will be. And I just realized that that's 100% what is not happening here.
Yeah.
So the example that Plato gives us is that a good doctor is the one that both knows how to cure someone and how to kill them. In order to have a craft, you have to know how it, like whatever comes out of it, you have to know how to apply the things, and you have to know the product of it. You don't know what's coming. It's like, I'm going to cure it, I'm going to kill it, I don't know. That is not a craft. It's just randomness. I don't think that the Greeks would appreciate the fact that anyone relates craft to AI prompting, because you never know what the AI is going to get you.
I guess the counter argument for that would be that so much of music and so much of art, great things, are based on happy accidents, like, oh my God, this thing happened and I didn't expect it to. But then the counter to that argument is the great artist knows how to capitalize on that bit of randomness and knows exactly how to take that from that initial spark to the final product.
Might I say, incredible. Incredible. This was the nail in the coffin for me. Because the accumulated knowledge aspect, that first stage, knowing what the patterns do, using a Lydian sharp 11 mode and scale, shows an extreme amount of brightness and mystique. Cluster chords create this clonky, crunching sound that's tense, that 7/8 in some contexts can be feeling urgent. That is craft, understanding cause and effect. And it's very much anti-convenience and much more experience. The second stage of real-time synthesis, navigating outcomes and determinations under specific constraints, it's not random. You're activating patterns, structural understandings, etc., and through outcomes, through that memory. And you're also looking ahead and anticipating through the future what you're trying to get to, those goals, those ideas, those aesthetic constraints, whatever it might be. The craft is integrating multiple different streams of information and knowing what each choice, quote unquote, provides. Finally, the last stage of documenting what outcomes worked, the reflection aspect that this thing actually worked, this resolved beautifully, or I lost the structure of this, 4/4 system, or I lost the blues structure, or I really loved that random moment. Let's capitalize on it. Either in real time or afterwards or both. AI does none of this. It does not know the outcomes. It's statistically probable and gives us likely continuations. It doesn't navigate constraints. It doesn't document what worked. If you don't know what's coming, it's just randomness. That's what AI is showing us. That's what it's proving to us. It's not craft. So the idea of building level 1 capacity takes time. Not because we are efficient or inefficient, but because we develop things through accumulation. We develop things through mastery. patience isn't optional, it's structurally required, and something that is talked about is how delaying pleasure makes us unique as a species, as a people. And that's something that Dr. Noé highlights. And if Isuno listing impatience as a virtue, that's very much anti-pleasurable delay. And this idea of taking years of accumulated time, hours of practice, and 10,000 hours of practice, reflective capacity, developing documentation, it shows that delayed pleasure is integral to the creative process, to the artistic process, to the improvisational process. And the people who use it feel the difference. We know. We can tell. So that's why Suno users having no influences and only listening to their own prompts show us that role models demonstrate skill, show us that skill cannot just be replaced by taste and cannot just replace a lack of looking up to people. Everybody will prompt equally well at some point, especially as AI gets better at interpreting the information. So there's going to be something that's going to be worth admiring. And what is that? The mastery of architectural temporal consciousness, this architectural engagement through real-time synthesis, this cognitive capacity. And it's AI resistant because it's a skill, and a skill does not compress. So let us finalize with the Neely is going to ask a brilliant question in his video in regards to that split. And I just want to highlight it. I had mentioned it previously, but again, just highlighting this moment again. Actually, you know what? Never mind. I think we've hit all the points. So what does this mean for you? What is the point? If you're a musician worried about AI, practice that temporal consciousness. I hope to create marketable assets from my research and from the researchers prior to me, Paul Ricoeur, who gave us the idea of this temporal consciousness, Sven Bjerstedt, Dr. Sven Bjerstedt, who created the jazz verification and structural framework that I use to apply to other cultures and verify a strong case for its universality throughout humanity. Understand that you are playing a different game, that you're dealing with architecture of temporals, improvisation, creativity. Develop that capacity. And then if you want to resist totally, then become a synthesist, become someone who develops their own, uses the architecture in a completely nuanced and different way. Build something novel that AI cannot touch and that constantly evolves so that AI can never catch up to. It is not the output that you should be valuing, but the experience over convenience, the capacity to generate coherent novelty under constraint. And again, that's a skill. So Adam is correct. The world that we live in, this techno-capitalist era, this era of de-skilling, this era of taste, this era of convenience over experience, narcissistic consumption, the splitting of music, it's real. And my framework hopes to add different things of why performance is going to exist because of those architectural engagements, why people are going to occupy a unique territory with creating their own implementations and constraints. And it shows what musicians actually do and their actual value beyond just a product, beyond just a track. And Adam Neely finalizes the video with simply, you should say no to AI, refusing the AI feature. And I agree. And we should build on things that AI can't steal, which is our minds, that conscious temporal aspect. I will leave you with this. Time is a really interesting thing. Time moves linearly, right? But we never experience time because when we talk about the three kind of temporal aspects of time, past, present, and future, the past is always behind us. The present is always fleeting. and the future is always ahead of us. So how do we experience time? Well, that idea of creating artifacts through this temporal consciousness is how we have books, is how we have art, music, and how players develop the ability to become the greats and excellences. Because we are all using the past and the future combined into the present to create beauty. And this aspect, this single creative moment, is creating something that doesn't exist before, and that's what humanity does, and AI does not. You're doing something that is mystical, that is human, and you're playing a different game entirely. So I plan on developing a curriculum that hopefully teaches this framework in its entirety, exercises, assessments, design workshops, how to become a synthesist. I would love for people to participate in testing and participate in, working out the framework and etc. I want to make some money off of this. I want to show people that there's real value in this. I'm not going to just offer this for free. We gotta get something beautiful out of this. And I want people who are serious about this to help me create this idea. So if you'd like to contribute in some sort of way, if you want more information, please send me an email, reach out to me on social media. I am always around. And if you'd like my thesis in full, or if you'd like videos of me talking about my thesis, I have recorded some of my presentations over time. So thank you for watching this beautiful connection. And please check out Adam Neely's video. Go to Nebula, that's a great streaming service. Talk more about art and what it means to be temporally conscious. Thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.